I'm Robyn. I work with the Department of Water and Environmental, the Department of Water and Environmental Regulation as an environmental water planner in the Water Allocation Planning Branch. My talk today is about long-term wetland vegetation monitoring, and it feels a bit obsolete after the talk we've just heard because we're right back to doing everything on the ground and measuring stuff, but we are trying to look at the more interesting sort of stuff. So basically this program's been running since the mid-1990s, and today I'm just going to talk about why we monitor, where we monitor, what we're actually monitoring, and how we do it. I'm not going to go into the results too much because we've got 30 years of data and it's pretty complicated, but if anyone wants to talk about it later, that's fine. Which button am I pushing? So why? Why are we monitoring these wetlands? Glasses on. WA is responsible for regulating and managing the state's water resources in a sustainable and productive manner. Some of these most important resources are across the Perth groundwater area and the southwest, and this is where these monitoring programs are focused. The Perth groundwater area covers Jandakot and Gnangara Mounds, and conditions were set under the EPA Act and detailed in 2 ministerial conditions. So these are the monitoring conditions. The conditions have specific monitoring and reporting commitments, including monitoring against water level criteria at wetlands and ecological monitoring of wetland vegetation. There's also requirements for doing macroinvertebrates, water quality, frogs and terrestrial vegetation, but I'm not involved in those. Pierre Horwitz is very much involved in a lot of that stuff, wherever he is. Heck yeah. So in the southwest, there's no ministerial conditions, but the 2009 Southwest Groundwater Allocation Plan identified a number of areas that may have been at risk from abstraction from the Southwest Yarragadee when that work was put up. So that enabled us to, in response to that, we established a number of wetland sites down there, but it enabled us to set the water level criteria at reference GDEs on the Blackwood Plateau, Southern Swan Coastal Plain and Scott Coastal Plain, and to monitor against them. In addition to this wetland veg monitoring in the southwest, we'll also undertake the Healthy Rivers program to assess flora and fauna and wetland water quality. What did I do? So where are we actually undertaking this monitoring? In the Perth groundwater area, it's, as I was saying, across the Gnangara and Jandakot Mounds. The programs were established in 1996 when Ray Fron from ECU and Phil Ladd from Murdoch Uni established the initial monitoring sites. These were generally at the bigger, more iconic wetlands, such as Joondalup and Jandakot in the north, and down here Thompson's Lake, Banganup Lake, Forestdale Lake. Additional sites have been added over the years, and we've altered the frequency of the monitoring as we've come to learn and understand more about the way wetland vegetation responds to change in water regimes, because we just don't need to do it as frequently because we know how they're responding. Although we're now visiting most sites on a 3-yearly rotating basis, we also do a group of sentinel sites every year, and again, they're the more important sites. Between 2005 and 2009, ECU, mostly me, established southwest monitoring sites on, as I mentioned, the Blackwood, Southern Swan Coastal Plain and Scott Coastal Plain. WA took over that monitoring in 2012, and we now rotates visits on a 3-yearly basis across those sites. So all in all, we're monitoring 16 wetlands and 68 transects. There's a double up on some of the wetlands with the number of transects. Some of the wetlands in the pictures there, top right-hand side is Loch McNess on the Gnangara Mound. Bottom right is the Reedia wetlands. Left is Loch Nature Reserve in Busselton, and then Poison Gully in the Blackwood Plateau, and up the top is one of the smaller sumplands out in the Lexia wetlands. So what are we actually looking at? Unlike a lot of veg monitoring programs, we're not just doing presence and absence of species across a site. We're focusing on the vegetation health and the condition of the vegetation. This is done over permanently marked transects. Is there a light on this thing? Yep, permanently marked transects that run from the wetland edge into the fridging vegetation. And unfortunately, our transects are only 40 metres. So, in the Perth area anyway, they're 40 metres. We have 4 10 by 10 metre plots. So in the southwest, so there's the Gnangara and Jandakot Mounds. In the southwest, because the vegetation tends to be a bit more intact and there's less disturbance, we have 80 metre transects, and there's 4 20 by 20 metre plots in those, which is a lot of work, but it gives us a good idea of what's going on. So we actually assess 3 main parts of vegetation condition: the canopy itself, so the tree health, those 3 components, and with all species we do a cover and abundance of every species in transect, and that lets us derive a weediness index. And we also look at the groundwater levels and the eco-hydrological ranges of wetland species across a site. So at each of these wetlands, we do have a permanent groundwater monitoring bore. And it's groundwater we're interested in as well in most of these cases. So I'm going to talk about all of those in a bit more detail. Tree health and canopy condition. We assess this for every tree across every transect. We generally target wetland species only, so in the Perth metropolitan area we'd be looking at the Melaleucas, Raphiophila and Priceana, Eucalyptus rudus, Banksia littoralis, and then southwest there's other species as well, so we'll pick up whatever species are the more dominant wetland species. Every single tree has a tag, so we know that we're looking at the same tree year on, year out. We use a 3-point scale for the canopy condition, which scores 3 different aspects of the condition: dead branches, epicormic growth, and canopy density or cover. We score dead branches, it's a bit difficult up there, as either 1, 3, 5, 7 or 9, with 1 representing the tree that's almost dead and 9 virtually no dead branches. A 5 would be 50% dead branches. The tree on the top left would probably score a 1 because there's not much left alive, and the one on the right would score a 9, it's near perfect. Canopy condition is also scored on the same scale, 1, 3, 5, 7 or 9, 9 being near perfect, again like the tree on the right. Epicormic growth can be used as an indicator of water stress in wetland trees, as they reduce water use by restricting xylem water flow to the outer branches, causing growth to occur just on the main stem or the lower branches. However, epicormic growth also is an indicator of what happens after fire, so it dominates when trees are sprouting after fire. For this reason, we score the epicormic growth only much lower, so it's 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5. 1 is no epicormic growth and 5 is a lot. So that in the middle, tree in the middle there would score a 1 because it's pretty much all epicormic growth. When trees are obviously resprouting after fire, they're either excluded or we score them a standard 3 across the board, so we know what we're about. The 3 scores are combined to get a total out of 23, and then we break them up into poor, average, good or excellent. That allows us to, over time, track the condition of a whole gamut of species at a particular wetland. That's actually Lake Banganup, so you can see there's been a bit of a change. So in the early days there was a lot of good, healthy trees. They deteriorated a bit, and now we've got a few excellent healthy trees. What's missing is the number of deaths we've had there through fires. We also, while we're out and about, measure the tree size. Basically, with a tape measure, we're hugging the trees, every single branch, every single diameter. This allows us to keep track changes in age classes over time, and to keep an eye on recruitment success. For example, at the bottom there, that graph, those 2 species would have had a recruitment event fairly recently, and they're actually growing, so to be able to track their growth over time. We also measure all the seedlings and saplings in a plot every year, and that allows us to derive a regeneration index, which is just again a measure over time of how things are changing. The graph there, the graph there, you can see there's not much going on in the early days, and there was a fire, allotment nest, lots of seedlings, and then they're just gradually dropping off. So what these measures mean together is that we can see if the environmental conditions, mostly in this case water levels, are suitable for species to recruit and for seedlings to establish and survive. In the understory, and with every species, we look at the cover and abundance. So we identify every single species in the transect and give it a score from 1 to 10 on the cover in a 10 by 10 metre plot. It also includes weeds and annuals. This allows us to see changes in species dominance over time and to track any contraction of wetland species towards a wetland and or any increases in the dominance of terrestrial vegetation. We can also use direct species counts or richness to see how similar species composition is from year to year and over extended periods. We also do a weediness index, which allows us to track how dominant wetland weeds are becoming. This one's a bit confusing, the hydroecological ranges. When we established the transects back in the early days, we measured the elevational range across the whole transect and then measured the distribution of species across the transect. We tie these distributions into, so that species, that's its range across that transect. We relate that to 3-year average spring maximums, in that case 9 metres, and 3-year autumn minimums, subtract the depth from the elevation at both, and it will give us a range of water levels at that site. So this species at that site has a range of -2.1 to -4.3. So that means the depth of groundwater is 2.1 metres there and 4.3 metres there. Over time, that allows us to track whether there's been a change in the distribution of species at a site. You can see this photos at the top there. I think it's Lake Narragamutt. In 2010, there was quite a bit of typha, sort of in the middle of the transect. By 2012, it was quite dead. By 2019, it's been completely replaced by weeds. In the graph there, that's the same thing. So the typha there, you can see that its water level range in 2001 was much longer, much broader than it is now. It's just contracting. So what does all this mean and where does all this go? For the Perth groundwater areas, consultants, ECU and Murdoch, report annually to us, presenting really detailed results. They also provide a traffic light style assessment of long-term, medium-term and short-term changes. In this table, I've only presented a few of the parameters because there's too much otherwise. In the table, so red represents a serious negative change, orange is a negative change, and green is a positive change. So for the weediness index, red would be lots more weeds, green would be less weeds. With all these results, we in turn report to the EPA annually and triannually to outline our compliance with the ministerial conditions that I mentioned before. In the southwest groundwater areas, because monitoring is in-house and there are no EPA commitments, there's no official reporting. However, we've pulled together all the data from all these years into one spot, and we're hoping that there's someone out there with the better modelling and statistical know-how than us that can compile all together and come up with some useful, meaningful water level thresholds and triggers for species across the Swan Coastal Plain, southwest, sorry. Thank you.